And
I'm Robert Hamill. I'm the administrator of Iowa's Crime Victim Compensation and Sexual Assault Examination Payment Program. I've been in my position for a little over 3 years, and it's kind of funny that Sarah and I are both here because when we were approached by her office about this project, I didn't know that there was a compensation component to it. And so I was like, cool, one less project I have to have anything to do with. And my director, who many of you may know, Janelle Malone, she's very much a visionary. She's great to work for. And she'll, until I say, please no more, she'll keep piling it on my plate. And this was one where she's like, we just need a little bit of stuff from you. Sarah and I have only been working together a short time, but we'll talk a little more towards the end about where we see this relationship going, and that's one of the really other benefits of what we did here, specifically to the compensation program. My agency does administer both VOCA compensation, VOCA assistance, VAWA, SAC, FIPSA, a state funding stream, and when you administer both, you know the power that you have within your state to do good things for victims in working both sides of that, the compensation and assistance together. I can run it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we need uppy. 2 uppies.
One more?
Maybe. Is it uppy or
over? Over? Page, page up, not the arrow.
Sorry, we're
Sorry about
Iowa.
that.
We don't know what we're doing.
Page down. Okay, there we go. All right.
We need one more. Oh,
there we go.
So just to kind of give you guys an understanding of what our relationship looked like before this grant, we actually work in the same exact building. We work 2 floors above each other, and I haven't seen this guy. I hadn't seen this guy before a year ago. So, and now I'm in his office probably at least weekly, having a discussion with him. We haven't actually leveraged this partnership before, so we're very fortunate and lucky and appreciative of the funding that's been provided, because I really think that as a this project, we have the ability to continue to partner and work together on future projects. So when we were first discussing how to, what to do with this partnership fund, the initial discussions revealed that there were a lot of different evaluation services that are available through the SAC. The CVAD routinely requires that evaluation services for either federal grant projects or for various internal needs, but largely these efforts have been contracted out. And so we believe that there was kind of a gap that could be filled through this partnership. Also, another thing is that there's also, I don't need to tell anyone in this room, but the research capabilities of the SAC. We maintain about 16 different professionals, 4 of which who have quite a heavy background in statistical analysis, research, and program design, for which CVAD has a use to leverage as well. And then, like Robert mentioned, there's a CVAD partnership with a variety of different funding streams and programs that he manages that we could examine.
So specifically for this analysis, we were looking at Iowa's Crime Victim Compensation Program, and I'm biased about the quality of our program, but I do believe we have one of the best ones in the country. We have a very good statute in terms of what the definition of crime is. It's not limited to, homicide, assault, domestic violence, all those things. In essence, did the incident happen in the state of Iowa? Was there a threat of personal injury or death to the victim, and was it punishable by felony or misdemeanor? That doesn't mean that there had to be a felony or misdemeanor charge, but would the incident have been chargeable had law enforcement made an arrest and prosecution decided to go that direction? So these are some of the benefits that we provide. I think this is most, if I believe all of them. Medical care, counseling, and lost wages make up the bulk of what we pay for. We routinely max out our funeral benefit in every homicide case that we pay. We don't have a global maximum for our compensation program, but rather each of these categories of benefit has a statutory maximum associated with it. So for instance, we can pay up to $6,000 in lost wages when a victim is injured and unable to work. Since we also provide the training through the assistance side to all of our funded programs in conjunction with our statewide coalitions, of which we have a very good statewide coalition against domestic violence, statewide coalition against sexual assault, and we also have a new coalition that is called the Coalition for Collective Change. and they're doing a lot of work on providing certification for our programs that specialize in serving victims of homicide and other violent crimes. You know, we've always had very good DV and SA services, but there was a restructuring of the way victim services were delivered in the state about 6 or 7 years ago, and there was a need identified to be able to provide services to victims of other crimes that didn't fit into what had typically been provided through VOCA funding, VAWA funding, and state funding. So when we go out and we train on these things, we train advocates, management staff, law enforcement, prosecution, anybody who may interact with the victim, because for us to get an application for the compensation program, someone has to provide that to them. The right to compensation is in statute in Iowa, or the right to apply at least. I mean, we have, you know, eligibility requirements, of course, but the right to be made aware of compensation is in statute. And if someone doesn't provide them with that information, then they can't apply. So we make sure to get out in front of everyone talking about our programs. And when people ask us about very hypothetical situations, what if this case, you say, well, in that case, it might look like this, but the details really matter. So the key information for you is to just have people apply. That's the takeaway we want everyone who we talk to about our compensation program to know, is just have them apply. We'll sort out the rest. We're not going to sit here and bore you to death with our administrative rules and our program policies that might help us get to the point of being able to make an approval, but just have them apply and we'll take it from there.
We're going to be the group that gets us back on time. If we get talking too fast, by all means, just tell us to slow down. So, you know, to back up a little bit, what we did is we did an analysis of the crime victim compensation program that Robert described. We wanted to do a comparative geospatial analysis of reported crime as well as crime victim compensation services. So broadly, the goals of the project, there were just 3 of them, to determine, and they're pretty simple, whether victim services were reaching all of Iowa's 99 counties, whether if there are underserved areas where victims, including those of marginalized populations, might be underreporting, and as well as the crime types for which crimes may not be reporting. So to perform this analysis, we utilized 3 different data sets. I'm actually going to start with the crime victim claims data. This information was provided directly from CVAD, and it included crime victim compensation claims that were submitted between 2015 and 2017. And then we also utilized 2 additional data sources to provide us information about general county population demographics as well as victimization information. So the census data basically was, it included juvenile as well as adult populations, and this is important because we do know that compensation and victim services claims can be provided to people who are under the age of 18. So we thought it important to include those individuals when discussing variation in census data. And then the most recent data from 2014 and 2016 was utilized. As far as the charge, we compared the victim claim data up against charge information. So the reason why we use charge information is in our justice data warehouse, it's a central repository of key criminal and juvenile justice data. We have everything in there. Names, I mean, just, it is unreal the amount of data that we have, and then we have the ability to not only link our charge and conviction information, but we can also follow offenders into prison, out of prison, to CBC, back to the charge and conviction stage. So yeah, and I hear that that's kind of like a unique system that Iowa has, but what we have is very great and very valuable. But one of the benefits to using the charge data is that not only do we have offender information included, but we also have the ability to identify victims. So there's a victim roll code. So if there's an identified victim who's associated with a criminal court case, we have some information about what that victim looked like. So that's the information that we use. Yep. And I wasn't sure how familiar you all were with ArcGIS. I think Arizona, I think you guys use ArcGIS. If you guys, this was our first delve into mapping software, and we love maps. Everybody in this room loves statistics and complex analysis, and that's great, but normal people don't get it. But everybody gets maps. Maps are something that everyone can relate to and everybody understands. except for if you're me trying to navigate DC last night. But yeah, so just to I wanted to provide a little bit of information as to how we use this software. So this information that I've displayed is actually completely unrelated to the data that I'm going to present, but just to kind of give you an idea of what ArcGIS has and its capabilities. To the left is a map of schools in like our local Des Moines area, it's kind of our central spot. And then the heat map that's in blue and red, that's crash data. And so what we were interested in mapping is whether or not there were, you know, a high degree of vehicle crashes in school areas. And I don't know that there's a direct correlation here about, you know, bad youthful drivers. It's probably more a testament to just being a centrally located, heavily trafficked area. Again, completely unrelated, but for those of you who are getting interested in maps, we think they're pretty cool. So a lot of the data here is going to actually be examined via county. And the reason why we do that is because all of the victim compensation claims are provided on individual county basis. So it kind of tells Robert who needs to, where do we need to provide outreach efforts for. So the first goal of the analysis was to determine whether victim services are reaching all of Iowa's 99 counties. And we found through examination of the last 3 crime victim compensation data that they are. Every single county, with the exception of one, Ringgold County, which is all the way to the south. But 98 out of the 99 counties were submitting victim compensation claims. So that's very impressive.
And we have, I think part of that speaks to and I would be interested in, maybe this is something we could do in the future, to compare this to what it looked like prior to the big VOCA increase, because we have a lot more advocates in the field, a lot more programs serving greater areas. Our regionalized approach to victim services, I think, and mobile advocacy has been an improvement, and we know that that data has been reflected in our sexual assault services provided with our domestic violence. I don't know that it's quite as clear, but kind of the area where Ringgold County is, and you probably can't see it too well, but the big blue spot in the middle is Polk. That's where Des Moines is. It's our largest city. So straight down from there, and then 2 to the left, if you're facing the screen, that's Ringgold, and that whole area is very sparsely populated. And so it's not surprising to me to see that if we had a spot where we weren't receiving applications or needed to try to be more diligent in our efforts to reach people there, that it would be that part of the state. It's just a little bit more isolated and out there a little further, and with fewer people, less resources are devoted to it in general. So that wasn't surprising that this was the outcome in that.
Yeah, Robert hit the nail on the head. The counties that are darker, they're not only the counties that had a higher amount of claims, but they're also the counties that are more populated, which is good. That's how we would. That's what we would. That's what we want. So an additional component that we wanted to examine was whether or not we wanted to determine underserved areas where victims, including those within marginalized populations, might be underreporting. So this information displays the ratio of eligible criminal cases to victim claims by county. So what that means is that out of all of the compensation claims that Robert gets, there's some which are more, that are associated with like a criminal justice code. That's what we used. And so of those with a criminal justice code, where was there underreporting that was taking place? And so what we find is actually the darker counties, that's positive. These are counties that have a greater criminal case to ratio, indicating, I'm sorry, that's negative, indicating a possible area that's underserved or underreporting. And so what we see is the darker counties that are actually we kind of notice the trend here, in the northeast and the southwest. You kind of notice that those 2 areas are more blue than the rest of the state. And this is not surprising either, because those are the areas that are going to be more rural. Those are areas where we might be seeing a little bit of underreporting. And then we wanted to determine underserved areas by race. So statewide data indicates that non-white individuals are not an underserved population and are actually overrepresented in victim claims populations. So what I did here is I broke down the racial demography of our census population, and then those victims who are in our criminal data, and compared those against our claim compensation victims. And you'll notice that our claim compensation victims have the highest proportion of non-white reporting compared to even the general population or even the victims that are identified in criminal cases.
And that doesn't come as a surprise to it doesn't to us.
Because the research tells us that these are groups that are going to be victimized at higher rates as well. And then what we wanted to do is we wanted to drill down to determine, okay, so we see that largely we have an overrepresentation, but we know that this likely isn't the case for all of Iowa's counties. And so what this information displays is that counties with darker coloring have a higher percentage of non-white victim claimants than non-white crime victims. So the dark is good. These are, the dark counties are actually the counties, and this term is not meant negatively, but for simplicity, the dark blue counties are over-serving, or they're serving at higher proportions people who are non-white. And the counties who are, looks like the yellow, those are either underreporting or reporting proportionally to crime data. And everything in gray is counties that we did not have enough information for. So I think we had about 17 counties that we were able to report racial information. We wanted to look at the same exact thing by gender. So in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see that I went ahead and broke down the census victim crime data and then your claim victims. And you'll note that the female population of claim victims, again, is higher than the female crime victims and further higher than what census data reveals. So if you drill down further and you look at each of the individual counties, again, the darker counties are those that have a higher proportion of female claimants. So again, these are the counties that are over-serving or serving proportionally higher amounts of women than their criminal case data. Does that make sense? Data by age, this information gets a little bit funky. Crime victim age is actually mapped by a percent, whereas the former mapping things that were provided were ratios or percent differences. And the reason why I chose to map this information by age, it's really to demonstrate the volume of claimants in a particular county who are under the age of 18, as opposed to the over or underrepresentation of crime victims who are under 18, because generally it's expected that the proportion of crime victim claimants under 18 not be equivalent to the proportion of criminal case victims. So comparing the two just wasn't, that's not a good way to analyze this information by age. But you'll notice too that the statewide data indicate that crime victim claimants under the age of 18 are represented proportionally to state populations. Okay, lastly, we wanted to determine crime types for which victims might not be reporting. During the last 3 fiscal years, assault, domestic abuse, and sexual assault were crimes with a larger proportion of crime victim claims, and we wanted to examine the most serious charge for a single criminal case statewide. In examining that, we actually found that when examining cases and examining ratios, for every 12 criminal case charges of assault, there was 1 victim service claim. For every 9 criminal domestic charge, there was 1 victim service claim. Sexual assault, for every criminal sexual assault, there was 1 victim service claim. So that tells us that we're doing a very good job in Iowa at serving victims of sexual violence.
I would also suggest it tells you we're doing a very bad job at charging those. So, I mean, that's not going to come as a surprise anymore here.
So to conclude, we're largely achieving our goals of providing statewide crime victim services to Iowans, including those who have been historically underserved populations. However, it's absolutely important to note that even though those were our general findings, we did note some variation by counties.
So the last thing is how we intend to use this information to inform our program and practice is that this gives us an idea of the counties where outreach on the availability of the compensation program should be focused. The source of referral from our internal system helps identify stakeholders who are providing us with applications. As you can see there, a third of our referrals come from victim services, about 13% come from county attorneys, which is generally victim witness coordinators, and then 9% from law enforcement. There's about another third of it that are not identified, which likely are split up probably along similar lines to this, I believe. So we've always known who refers applicants to us, who provides someone with our application or helps them fill it out online. But we haven't always known where we need to focus outreach in terms of geographics. So now we have a better idea of that, and we can go to these county attorneys, these programs serving victims in these particular counties, and say, you know, we've identified through this project this, and focus our outreach efforts there. In fact, we have a team of 5 or 6 staff who do our training and outreach, and they're putting together their calendar year 2019 plan right now and using this information to inform what some of that will look like.
Great. Thank you very much.